With the whole OS age verification, age attestation stuff going on, I'm not surprised in the slightest that somebody's having a bit of fun with it. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and statistically, you're not a lawyer, and neither are the devs of Ageless Linux. Software for humans of indeterminate age. We don't know how old you are, we don't want to know, we are legally required to ask, we won't. Now, I'm going to assume that this is a joke, okay? It may not be a joke, this might be entirely serious, but unless you got a legal team to back up that joke, I wouldn't recommend taking it too seriously. I am not going to recommend installing some random distro nobody heard about until 5 days ago. I don't recommend installing just random scripts off the internet, but I do think that write-up is kind of fun. Legal standing, again, from not a lawyer, why we are definitely an operating system provider. A lot of people have been making this argument that Linux distros are not operating systems because the kernel is its independent project, libraries and software are independent projects, the distro is just merging them all together. That's not how the real world works. We can talk about how Linux is not an operating system. It's an operating system. And here we're going to acknowledge that and then have some fun with it. Which makes it even more fun in this case because of what the distro actually is. It is the loosest definition of a distro you will ever see. Some people have asked whether Ageless Linux is a real operating system or whether we are really an operating system provider subject to AB 1043. We wish to be absolutely clear, we are. The California legislature has made this unambiguous. The definition of a operating system provider. This means a person or entity that develops, licenses, or controls the operating system software on a computer, mobile device, or any other general purpose computing device. Ageless Linux controls the operating system software on your general purpose computing device. Specifically, and this is what I mean by loose definition of a distro, we control the contents of /etc/os release, which is the file that identifies the operating system you are running. After installing Ageless Linux, when you run a cat/etc/os release, it says Ageless Linux, that is control. So in the case of Arch Linux, if I do etc/os-release, this is going to say Arch Linux, and basically, that's what it modifies. That's pretty much the entirety of the distro. Furthermore, any individual who runs our conversion script is also a person who controls the operating system software on a general purpose computing device, making you, the user, an operating system provider as well. Welcome to the regulatory landscape. Moving on from that, the definition of an application. Application means a software application that may be run or directed by a user on a computer, a mobile device, or any other general-purpose computing device that can access a covered application store or download an application. Every package in the Debian repository is an application under this definition. I think everyone would pretty much agree with that. CalC is an application. SL, I think? Yes, SL. I couldn't tell if there was a 1 or an L in this font. Is an application. Toilet, the text art renderer is an application. All 64,000 plus packages in Debian stable are applications that may be run by a user on a general purpose computing device. Each of their developers is under 1798.500F, required to request an age bracket signal when the application is downloaded and launched. And the definition of a user. User means a child that is the primary user of the device. Please note that under this statute, a user is by definition a child. If you are 18 or older, you are not a user under AB 1043, you are an account holder. Don't you love regulations and weird definitions of terms that just don't need to exist? The entire law regulates the experience of users who are exclusively children. Adults are not users, they are infrastructure. Ageless Linux rejects this ontology. On Ageless Linux, everyone is a user, regardless of age, and no user is a child until they choose to tell us so. They will not be given the opportunity. And the definition of covered application store. A covered application store means a publicly available internet website, software application, online service, or platform that distributes and facilitates the download of applications from third-party developers to users of a computer, a mobile device, or any other general-purpose computing device that can access a covered application store or can download an application. This would include things like your smart TVs, for example. This website is a publicly available internet website that distributes and facilitates the download of applications, specifically a bash script, to users of a general-purpose computing device. We are also a covered application store. Debian's app repositories are a covered application store. The AUR is a covered application store. Any mirror hosting deb files is a covered application store. GitHub is a covered application store. Your friend's personal website with a download link to their weekend project is a covered application store. Honestly, this kind of feels like the definition of, like, when you need a TV license in the UK. Do you have a device capable of receiving live TV signal? Basically anything. As I said before, whilst you can download this, I would not encourage running random scripts. But I did go and look at the script, and basically what it does is you install Debian from Debian's own website, and then pretty much it just modifies the OS release file, and that's pretty much what it does. From what I can tell, it's just a lot of echoes, and there's nothing in there that stands out as being weird, besides this entire concept being weird. Nothing stands out as being bad or malicious. By running the conversion script, you also become an operating system provider because you are providing the operating system. The script, that's not actually an operating system. It doesn't become an operating system until it modifies your operating system. This is the logic we're following here. Keep up. You are a person who controls the operating system software on a general-purpose computing device, 1798 500G. If a child uses your computer, you are required by 1798 501A1 to provide an accessible interface at account setup that collects their age. The add user command does not ask for your age. We recommend not thinking about this. Honestly, that's how I feel about the entire thing we're reading here. I recommend not thinking about it and just listen and believe and follow along with the chaos. Now, at the top of this page, you may have noticed the $12 device. So we have this right here as well. Coming soon, the Ageless device and app store. Ageless Linux is currently a bash script. It will soon also be a physical device and a web service. We are building a sub $15 single board, the Milk 5 DualOS, a RISC-V ARM SBC with 512 megabytes of RAM, Wi-Fi 6, and 0.5 TOPS neural processing unit, with an SPI color display, a USB keyboard input, and a micro SD card running Debian with the Ageless overlay pre-flashed in -- flagrant mode. The device will present a first boot setup wizard that collects the user's name and explicitly refuses to collect their age. Connect over Wi-Fi to a publicly accessible app store, store.agelesslinux.org, a covered application store under the law, and offer a curated catalog of applications, including a Python learning environment, a text editor, a snake game, an IRC client with an honest disclaimer about an age gate, and an 8-line script called peepee that displays the word peepee in large letters on the screen and does nothing else. These devices will cost between $6 and $18 depending on the configuration, and we physically handed out to children at school STEM fairs and library maker spaces beginning January 2027, and will constitute unambiguous, documented, intentional violations of every applicable provision of AB 1043 at a per unit cost lower than the price of lunch. Can I just say, I love this entire page, man. This entire page is so stupid. How to distribute Ageless Linux to children. Ageless Linux is suitable for users of all ages, including those ages for which California legislature has expressed particular concern. The following guide explains how to provide Ageless Linux to minors in your household, school, library, or community. For parents and guardians, under AB 1043, you are the account holder defined by 1798 500A1 as an individual who is at least 18 years of age, or a parent or legal guardian of a user who is under 18 years of age. So, even if you were under 18, by the law, if you had a kid that was under 18, you would also be the account holder. If I understand that correctly. The law requires operating system providers to ask you to indicate the birth date, age, or both of the user of that device. Ageless Linux will not ask for this. To install Ageless Linux for your device, firstly, install Debian on the child's computer, create a user account for that child. You'll notice that add user asks for their full name, room number, work phone, and home phone, but not their age. Absolutely none of these you actually have to fill out, but add user, the regular tool on Linux, actually does just ask for a bunch of other random information. It's sort of like a holdout of when things were being done at universities with Unix. It's not something you would ever actually fill out now. Run the Ageless Linux conversion script, hand the computer to the child. You have now distributed an operating system to a minor with no age verification whatsoever. You are a criminal. For schools and libraries, Ageless Linux is ideal for education environments where you may have dozens or hundreds of users across all 4 age brackets defined by 1798-501A2. All of these brackets here. For bulk deployments, the conversion script can be included in your Ansible playbooks, Puppet manifests, or shell provisioning scripts. At no point in the automated deployment pipeline will anyone be asked how old they are. This is by design. For teenagers who found this website, hello. Under 1798-500I, you are a user with the statute defines as a child that is the primary user of the device. The legislature has defined you as a child. We will not. You know how to open a terminal. You probably already run Linux. Type the command. Nobody's going to ask how old you are. That's the point. And this part isn't actually a joke. These laws we're seeing signed in, these target platforms and distributors. If you as a user just say, I'm not going to be honest, there's actually no punishment for that. So, piece it together. Regarding the good faith effort safe harbor, an operating system provider or a covered application store that makes a good faith effort to comply with this title, taking into consideration available technology and any reasonable technical limitations or outages, shall not be liable for an erroneous signal indicating a user's age range. Ageless Linux has considered the available technology. The available technology is a bash script that modifies /etc/os-release. Now, obviously, this is not how the law actually works. You can't just say, well, we consider the available technology, and then we just don't want to make use of any of it. Again, if you want to do things like this, maybe have a legal team that can talk you through things. The reasonable technical limitation is that a bash script that modifies etc/os-release cannot collect, store, or transmit anyone's age. We have made a good faith effort to comply with the portions of the law that do not require us to survey our users. Our compliance with 1798-501A3 is, we believe, exemplary. Surely, the impossibility of a fine. Under 1798-503A, violations are subject to civil penalties up to $2,500 per affected child for negligent violations, or $7,500 per affected child for intentional violations. And this goes through the logic we've gone through throughout the entire video about why they think that this setup would not possibly be something in violation. User means a child that is the primary user of the device. Child means a natural person who is under 18 years of age. There is no age bracket signal, there is no interface, there is no API. Without age data, no person can be identified as a child. Without a child, there is no user. Without a user, there is no affected child. Without an affected child, the penalty is $7,500 times 0 equals $0. The only way to have an affected child is to first collect the age data that identifies them as a child. The penalty for failing to collect the age data can only be calculated using the age data you failed to calculate. The statute fines you per child, but you can only count the children by doing the thing you're being fined for not doing. This is not a clever loophole. No, that is actually exactly what it is. This would not fly in any court ever. This is the plain text of the statute, read in sequence, and that is why lawyers exist. Lawyers exist because you need to interpret the law. Judges exist because you need to interpret the law. This is like saying, oh, I'm allowed to run a crypto scam because there are no laws against crypto scams. Yes, but there are wire fraud laws, and there are other laws regarding scamming that can be applied to that situation. This is the definition of a loophole. The law defines its enforcement mechanism in terms of the data it requires you to collect. If you refuse to collect it, the enforcement mechanism has nothing to count. Of course, the California Attorney General is not bound by logic puzzles. In practice, the Attorney General could presumably argue that children exist regardless of whether you counted them. Yes, that is exactly what they would do. And estimate the number of affected children through other means. We agree. That's what makes this interesting. The law says per affected child. We say prove it. We didn't write your statute. We just read it. What this law is actually for and who can comply. Apple can comply. Apple already has Apple ID with age gating, parental controls, and App Store review. AB 1043 describes a system Apple has already built. Compliance cost to Apple, basically nothing. Google as well. They have a full system. Compliance cost to Google, basically zero. And same with Microsoft. Basically zero. Who cannot comply? The Debian project cannot comply. It is a volunteer organization with no corporate entity, no centralized account system, no app store with age gating, and no revenue to fund implementing one. Arch Linux cannot comply, neither can Gentoo, Void, NixOS, Alpine, Slackware, or any other of the 600 plus active Linux distributions maintained by volunteers, small non-profits, and hobbyists. The KickSecure and 1x projects, privacy-focused operating systems used by journalists, activists, and whistleblowers cannot comply without fundamentally compromising their reason for existing. A teenager in their bedroom making a hobby distro cannot comply. And this is the argument that basically everybody is making about these laws. Yes, if we're talking about these big companies that already have this system in place, for them, yeah, it's annoying. They don't want to do it. They don't want to be responsible for cases where there are children using their systems who are lying about their age and then they're possibly responsible for that. Yeah. They don't want to do it, but they can. When we're talking about these open source projects that don't have legal teams to go over the document for all of these different places, don't have the just free development effort to go and work on these systems that have nothing to do with their core mission, that's where there's a problem. What the law actually teaches children. The Ageless device ships an IRC client. It lets you chat with strangers on the internet. This is one feature on the device that poses a genuine, non-hypothetical risk to a child. Here is what the child sees when they launch it. This app lets you chat with people on the internet. If you're a kid, ask an adult before chatting online. That's not a legal requirement, it's just good advice. This is what actual child safety looks like. It is a sentence of honest advice from a human being. It costs nothing, it requires no API, no DBus interface, no age bracket signal, no operating system provider compliance infrastructure. It is the thing a parent says. It is the thing a teacher says. It is about building a compliance infrastructure. Now consider what a child learns on an AB 1043 compliant device. The child wants to use an app. The app requests an age bracket signal from the OS. The OS reports the child is under 13. The app's connect button is grayed out. The child who's been using computers since they were 4 goes back to the settings screen, changes their birthday to 2005, and returns to the app, which now lets them talk to strangers because the system believes they are 21 years old. The child has learned the following lesson. Legal compliance prompts are obstacles to be bypassed. The drop-down menu that asks your age is not there to protect you. It is there because a legislature required it. The correct response is to lie. Everyone knows this. The legislature knows this. The platforms know this. The child now knows this. There is some stuff I skipped over, which is mostly duplicates of what I'd already read, but I will leave this link down below because it is a fun read, and I guess if you really want to check it out for yourself, you can go and do so. Now, do I think this is legally solid? Good legal ground to stand on? I'm gonna say no, but again, I'm not a lawyer. Maybe there's something they know that I don't. But let me know your thoughts down below, and do you think this is a good idea? Because it's certainly an idea, if nothing else. Anyway, if you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well, and if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to the Liberapay, link in the description down below. That's gonna be it for me, and what a time, man, what a time.